Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi, Bava Metzia Daf 97. Let's dive straight in. Dina Hachi, V'shosei Rav. So continuing from the last Amr, Amar Le Rav Dahana Rav Asi Rav. Rav Kahana Rav Asi said to Rav, is this a halacha? Is it not sufficient for him to pay the difference excuse me, between the broken axe's previous and current value? And Rav silent, he did not answer. The Gemara concludes, and the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rav Kahana Rav Asi, that he returns him the broken tool and makes up the remainder of the tool's previous value with a monetary payment. What does that mean? He says, Hashoel Mishalim. If one borrows an item and it breaks, or one borrows an animal, I think, and it was injured or died, then the court appraises its current and previous values. It is returned to the owner in its current state, and the borrower makes the remainder of its value with a monetary payment. If its value depreciated between the time of the mishap and the time of the court case, the payment follows the time of the mishap. The ruling is in accordance with the opinion of Rav Kahana Rav Asi. If the item or animal is lost or stolen, then the borrower is liable for its whole value. And they've been part of Hilchot Sheil Ufukadon 1-3 Shulchan Aruch Mishnah 15 and 4-2. The Gemara relates, a third man borrowed a pail from another and it broke. He came before Rav Papa for judgment. Rav Papa said to him, bring witnesses that you do not deviate from its regular use, and you will be exempt from liability, as this is comparable to a case of a borrowed animal that died due to ordinary labor. The Gemara relates, a certain man borrowed a cat from another to hunt and kill mice for him. The mice banded together against it and killed it. Chasur shemeis mechamas ha'achborim. If one borrows a cat to hunt mice, and the mice band together against it and kill it, or if the cat dies from eating too many mice, then the borrower is exempt. These are considered to be cases of death due to labor. Shulchan Aruch 15:43 and the comment of the Ramon Asma there. Is this case comparable to a case where a borrowed animal died due to ordinary labor or not? Rav Mordechai said to Rav Ashi, Avimia of Hagronia said this in the name of Rava. With regard to a man whom women killed, there is a need for neither judgment nor judge. It is obvious that they are liable. In this case as well, it is obvious that the borrower may bring the cat to hunt mice, and he is therefore exempt from liability. Then there's to say that the incident actually occurred as follows. The cat ate many mice, and was harmed by doing so and died. Rav Asi sat deliberated. In a case like this was halacha. Rav Mordechai said to Rav Asi, Ravimi of Hagronia said this, with regard to a man who overindulged in sexual intercourse to the extent that women killed him by exhausting him, there is no judgment nor judge, there is no reason since it is his own fault. So what's the footnote? The Meiri writes, I said this. The incident with the cat. I'm not sure if this one. Okay, some explain that Rav Asi was uncertain whether this case could truly be classified as death due to labor. In a typical case of death due to labor, death, injury, or breakage is the result of performing the labor, whereas in this case, the cat did not die as a direct result of hunting the mice. Therefore, we thought that perhaps the death should be classified as a regular mishap, which the borrower is liable to in Torah's Chaim. Others explain that Rav Asi's question is based on the assumption that a borrower is exempt from liability when the animal dies due to labor. We presume that the owner was aware of that possibility and considered it and accepted responsibility for it. Since mice banding together against a cat is so unusual and unexpected, we can no longer be presumed that the owner considered that possibility and accepted responsibility for it, and that's from Ma'anei HaChochma. So the footnote where we were here. With regard to a man who overindulged in sexual intercourse to the extent that women killed him by exhausting him, there is neither judgment nor judge. There is no reason since it is his own fault. The Meiri writes that this saying is not needed as a proof with regard to halacha in the case of the cat that ate too many mice. It would be relevant in a case where an animal owner rented out a male animal for breeding and adjudged to excessive mating. Rava said, with regard to one who wants to borrow something from another and be exempt from liability, let him say to the lender at the time borrowing, pour me water, What does that mean? As Kiyan Maya, if one borrowed an item or also borrowed or hired the services of the owner at the time that the item was borrowed, then the borrower is exempt from liability. Even if the borrower merely said to the owner, "Give me some water to drink," and he did so, the borrower is exempt from liability. From the safe mishpatim, Hilchot Yuvas 1-3, Shulchan Aruch Mishpatim 46-1. The commentaries ask what the novelty is to this ruling, as it appears to be an obvious application of the exemption of borrowing an item together with the services of its owner. Some suggest that there is no novelty, but rather wish to offer practical advice to potential borrowers as to how they might prevent themselves from becoming liable. Others suggest that this ruling serves to teach that even minimal acts of work are sufficient for the exemption to apply to the river. It will thereby be exempt, as it is then a case of borrowing an item and borrowing or hiring the services of its owner with it. And if the lender is perspicacious, don't think I even know that word, and wishes to prevent the borrower from being exempt from liability, let him say to him, "Borrow the item first, and then I will pour water for you." Since the owner will not yet be working with the borrower at the time of the borrowing, the exemption does not apply. Rama says, a teacher of children. With regard to a teacher of children, a gardener, a butcher, or bloodlether, or a scribe of the city, if one borrows an item from them at the time that they are engaged in performing work for them, then the borrower is exempt from liability. Some say that even when they are not actually working, but supposed to be working, an item from them, the borrower is exempt from liability. And that's the Rambam said, Mishpatim Hilchot She'ina V'Kaden 2-3, Shulchan Aruch Mishpatim 46-12. The local gardener, the local butcher, and the local bloodlether, and a scribe of the city, with regard to all of them, if someone borrows an item for them at the time of work, the Rambam agrees with Rashi's explanation that the Gemara is referring to a case where one borrowed an item from these professionals at the very time they were engaged in performing work for him. According to this explanation, it would be difficult to understand what the novelty of our ruling is. It would appear to be the classic case of borrowing an item together with its owner. The Ravid suggests one might have thought that since these professionals are committed to perform work for everyone in the city, they cannot be considered specific employees of an individual, and therefore the exemption when one borrows an item together with its owner does not apply. Rava teaches that this is not so. Beinu Tam, in contrast to Rashi, explains that Rava refers even to a case where professionals were not engaged in performing work for the person who borrowed from them. Rava teaches that since they are committed to providing services for all the people in the city, they are considered to be concurrently in the employ of every individual in the city. Whenever anyone borrows something from them, the exemption applies to the Jewish Talmud. The Rava takes this further and states, and if the item was borrowed at a time when these professionals are supposed to have been working, then the exemption will apply even if for some reason they were not actually working at that time. He is exempt from liability as the case is comparable to borrowing an item and borrowing or hiring its owner with it. These people were always considered in the employ of residents of the place where they work. The Gemara relates, and the rabbis said to Rava, "Master, you lent to us to teach us Torah, and if we borrow an item from you, we should be exempt from liability." The rabbi stated this based on Rava's own ruling. Rava was angered. What does that mean? I've paid. Some teachers Rava took exception, so he took issue with the comparison teaching Torah to other professions. Unlike people who engage in other vocations, one who teaches Torah does not do so because he is bound to his employer, but because it is a mitzvah. Since the basis of the exemption is the fact that the owner of the borrowed item is bound to the borrower, it should not apply to a teacher. And that's from the Ein Yosef. This understanding appears to be true, even according to Gemara's conclusion. The fact that a teacher is not bound to teach specific subject matter demonstrates that he is not bound to his students. And that's from the Ma'anei HaChochmah. And it said to him, "Do you want to take my money away from me? On the contrary, I am not lent to you, rather you are lent to me, since you assist me in consolidating my Torah knowledge, and this is the proof that it is you who are assisting me. Whereas I am able to deflect you from one tractate to another tractate, because I am not obligated to teach you specifically that which you want to learn, you are not able to deflect from me from which I wish to teach." The Gemara comments, "But it is not so that a teacher is never lent to his students. During the days of Kala," what's that? Yom the Kala. The Kala was a uniquely Babylonian to the Jewish tradition, although it had many it may have had roots in similar practices in Eretz Yisrael. The Chala was essentially a gathering of all the sages. It took place twice a year in Adar and Elul, and it focused on a specific tractate, which sages would analyze and interpret. Thousands of people would attend the Chala gatherings, which also served as an extraordinary occasion to paying homage to the Torah. Rashi explains that the reference here is to the days of public gathering before the festivals, in which the public would be taught the halacha of the upcoming festival. Others explain that the reference here is to the standard meaning of the days of the Chala, i.e. the months in which the public came to study the main issues of a specific topic that had been announced during the previous year. The gatherings for Torah study in Elul and Adar, the teacher is required to teach a specific subject, and therefore he is lent to them. During the rest of these years they are lent to him, as he can teach whatever subject he wishes. When a teacher is able to choose which subject matter he teaches and can change from tractate to tractate, then it is considered that the students are in service of the teacher. Therefore, if the teacher borrows an item from one of his students, he is exempt from liability. If the teacher is committed to teaching the subject matter of the student's choice, then the teacher is in the service of his students. If a student then borrows an item from the teacher, he is exempt from liability. If the choice of material is dependent on both the student and teacher, and neither party is considered to be in the service of the other, and neither will be exempt from liability if they borrow an item from the other. The similar law applies to a community's prayer leader. If it is his choice when to lead the prayers, the community is in his service. Whereas if the community chooses when he leads the prayers, he is in their service. And that's what the Rambam say from his part of Hilchot She'ela Ufakadon to 4 Shulchan Aruch Mishpat 46:13. The Gemara relates, Me'amar Hanina rented out a mule to residents of Ben Hosai. He went out to raise up a load onto a mule together with those who rented it. Later they were negligent with the animal and it died. He came before Rava for judgment, and he deemed them liable to pay. The sages said to Rava, "This is a case of mishap that occurred due to a renter's negligence in safeguarding a deposit that was rented together with its owner, and the halacha in such a case is that the renter is exempt." Rava was embarrassed that he had ruled incorrectly. Ultimately, it was revealed that Me'amar bar Hanina had gone out only to supervise the loading. L'meisa te'una hu dinfak. In a case where one lends or rents out an animal to carry a load, if he then proceeds to help with loading items upon the animal, this is a case of borrowing an item together with its owner, even if the owner did so of his own accord. If he went out only to supervise the loading, he is not considered to be working for the borrower or renter. The borrower or renter remains liable for any mishaps. From say for his part, Hilchot She'ela Ufakadon to 2 Shulchan Aruch Mishpat 46:4. But did not actually participate in loading the animal. Accordingly, Rava's ruling that the renters were liable proved to be correct. In the moral comments, this works out well according to the one who says that in the case of a mishap that occurred because of a borrower's negligence in safeguarding a deposit that was borrowed together with its owner, the borrower is exempt. For that reason, Rava was embarrassed for ruling incorrectly. But according to the one who says that in such a case the borrower is liable, why was he embarrassed? When it appeared he ruled correctly, the Gemara amends the details of the incident. Those that rented the mule were not negligent with it, rather it was stolen from them, and then it died naturally in the house of the thief. And those who rented the mule came in before Rava for judgment, and he deemed them liable. The sages said to Rava, This is a case of theft of a deposit that was borrowed together with borrowing the services of the owner. So the borrower should be exempt. Rava was embarrassed that he ruled incorrectly. Ultimately, it was revealed that Me'amar bar Hanina had gone out only to supervise the loading, but did not actually participate in the loading the animal. Accordingly, Rava's ruling proved to be correct. There was one who borrowed a cow. He borrowed it for half of the day and rented out for the other half of the day. Or he borrowed it for today and rented out for tomorrow. He rented one cow and borrowed another one from the same person. And in one of the first two cases, the cow died, and it is not clear during which period the cow died. Or in the last case, one of the cows died, and it is not clear whether it had been the borrowed cow or the rented cow. If the lender then says the borrowed cow is the one that died, or it died on the day that it was being borrowed, Hamashio, the lender, the commentators note that when referring to the owner's claim, the Mishnah describes the owner as the lender, whereas when referring to the Bailey's claim, the Mishnah describes the Bailey as a renter. The Ritva explains that the Mishnah describes each party according to the way he would present his claim. Or it died during the period in which it was being borrowed, so that, according to his claim, the borrower is liable to pay for the cow. On the other one, the borrower says, I do not know what happened, the borrower is liable to pay. If the renter says the rented cow is the one that died, or it died on the day that it was being rented, or died during the period in which it was being rented, and the other one, the owner of the cow, says, I do not know what happened, the rent is exempt. If the owner says with certitude the borrowed cow is the one that died, and that renter says with certitude the rented cow is the one that died, then the renter takes an oath that the rented cow is the one that died, and he is exempt from liability. If this one says I do not know what happened, and that one says I do not know what happened, then they divide the disputed amount. The Bailey is liable to pay for only half the value of the cow. So let's see that in the notes. Shirut Hashomim Zechura Ula. The oath imposed upon a Bailey is unique in that, in contrast to the other oaths required by the Torah, the owner can demand the Bailey to take an oath even if the owner does not necessarily have definite knowledge of what happened. This is intended to motivate the Bailey to take extra care in safeguarding the deposit. It is also meant to prevent a situation where a mishap occurs to them as a result of the Bailey's negligence, but the Bailey rationalizes that it was not truly his fault, and the Ramban. In addition, in many cases of a mishap, only the Bailey is aware of what happened, while the owner is not. In order to allow an owner to discover what happened, the Torah provides him the option of demanding the Bailey take an oath. The Mishnah here presents a case in which there is disagreement whether a cow had died and had been rented or borrowed. It's found from the Mishnah and Gemara that the owner does not have the option to directly demand that the Bailey take an oath as to whether the cow was rented or borrowed. Noting this, Tosfos asks, since an owner has a right to demand that the Bailey take an oath as to what happened to the cow, why can he not also demand that the Bailey take an oath as to the nature of the agreement for that cow? The Ramban answers that by explaining that the basis for requiring a Bailey to take an oath does not apply to such a claim. The oath taken by a Bailey testifies to the way in which he safeguarded the deposit and to the fact that he safeguarded it appropriately, and the owner is provided the right to demand such information. By contrast, claim about whether the dead animal was rented or borrowed relates not to the way in which it was safeguarded, but to the very nature of the arrangement. And so the unique right of an owner of a deposit to demand an oath does not apply in that case. The commentaries discuss whether it is still possible for the owner to demand that the Bailey take an oath about the nature of the arrangement by extending the oath in which the Bailey states that he safeguarded the cow faithfully. As in general, the halacha is that once a defendant is required to take an oath, the plaintiff may demand that he take additional oaths about other issues. The commentators ask if that halacha applies in this case. The Ritva explains that if the Bailey takes a Bailey's oath, then indeed such a possibility exists. Nevertheless, the Gemara here discusses a case where the Bailey did not take any oath at all, either because the owner believed the Bailey when he said that the animal died, or because there were witnesses to the death. And consequently, there is no oath that can be extended. One borrowed a cow for half a day and rented it for the other half of the day. Or he borrowed it for one day and rented it for the next. Or he rented one cow and borrowed another from the same person. Then the cow or one of the other cows died. In one case is that the lender says the borrowed cow is the one that died, or it died on the day that it was being borrowed, or it died during the period in which it was being borrowed. The Bailey says I do not know what happened. Another case is that the Bailey says the rented cow is the one that died, or it died on the day that it was rented, or it died during the period during which it was being rented. And the owner says I do not know what happened. In all these cases, the burden of proof rests upon the claimant. If the proof cannot be provided, then if the owner makes his claim with certitude and the Bailey is uncertain about his claim, the Bailey must take an oath supporting his claim that the rented one died, or stating that he does not know what happened. If the owner makes an uncertain claim, then the Bailey is required to stand the Bailey's oath. The animal died naturally, and then that oath may be extended, so that he is also required to take an oath either that it was a rented cow that died, or that he does not know what happened. These halachot are based on the conclusion of the Gemara, and they are not in the contrary opinion of Samachos, who hold that in such cases the disputed amount is divided between the parties. for Kodim 3:3, Shulchan Aruch Mishpat 344:4. Conclude from the Mishnah that in a comparable case where one says to another, I have 100 dinars in your possession, if one says to another, I have 100 dinars in your possession, as I gave the money to you as a loan or a deposit, and the other one says, I do not know whether or not I received the money, then the defendant must support his claim by an oath, called an oath of inducement, and then he is exempt. If he was to fulfill his obligation to heaven, he should pay. If he admits that he received the money but does not know if he returned it, then he is liable to pay the money. In that case, the claimant is not even required to take an oath of inducement, but the defendant may cast a ban upon anyone who takes his money illegitimately. And say, if it's Potem Hilchot Toin Vinitan 17 Shulchan Aruch Mishpat 75:9. Ostensibly, the case in the Mishnah in which all agree that the cow had been rented or borrowed, and the issue whether the bailey is liable, is similar to a case in which all agree that money was borrowed, and the dispute pertains to whether the borrower paid the loan back to the lender. But in such a case, even Rav Nachman concedes that the defendant is liable. Why then does the Mishnah rule that the bailey is exempt in the case of the cow? The Ramban explains that in fact the cases are not similar. Once the bailey claims the animal that died had been rented, it is comparable to a case where one states with certitude that he had paid back the money he had borrowed. Therefore, the dispute between Rav Nachman and Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda applicable also to the case in the Mishnah. And the other one says, I do not know whether or not I have your money, and the defendant is liable to pay. The Gemara suggests, let us say that it is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Rav Nachman. As is stated that the Amoraim disagreed about the following case. With regard to one who approaches another and says, I have 100 dinars in your possession, and the other one says, I do not know. Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda say the respondent is liable to pay because he did not deny the claim. Rav Nachman and Rav Yochanan say he is exempt from payment. The Gemara refutes his contention. Just as Rav Nachman says in that context he is liable to pay only in a case where there is a matter of an oath between them, here too it is a case where there is a matter of an oath between them. The Gemara interprets the Mishnah in accordance with the opinion of Samachos, although the halacha is not decided in accordance with his opinion. Samachos Rav Nachman felt compelled to explain the Mishnah in a way that does not conflict with his opinion. The Rambam explains that the Gemara interpreted only the latter clause of the Mishnah in accordance with the opinion of Samachos. It's possible that the first clause is unanimously agreed upon, and therefore Rav Nachman needed to demonstrate that the Mishnah does not stand in opposition to his opinion. In that case, Rav Nachman rules that he is liable to pay only if he is already liable to take an oath concerning his denial of part of the claim. Since he does not know if he owes this sum, and he is therefore unable to take the oath he is liable to take, he must pay. In this case as well, since the bailey does not know what occurred, he cannot take an oath and must pay. The Gemara asks, what is the circumstance of a matter of an oath? The Gemara explains, this is a contradictory statement of Rava. Thank you for listening. I wish you all the best. And may we hear better news, especially in Israel. Take care, bye.